Poštovani gospodine Marinoviću,
Respected Mr. Marinović, Excellencies, representatives of international organizations, respected representatives of state authorities, and dear guests, welcome to Data Protection Day 2021. My name is Zlatko Petrović. I'm the Assistant Secretary General in the Office of the Commissioner, and I will guide you through the program of this ceremony today. Today, 40 years ago, the Council of Europe adopted and provided for ratification the first international document where the right to data protection, personal protection was established. The 1981 Convention for the Protection of Intelligence with regard to automatic processing of personal data, 108. This is the basis for establishing basic fundamental human rights, which was started in the 1980s and had significance at the beginning of the millennium. Because of the new technological developments and globalization and new business models based on protection, based on data, data protection has become very important. Data Protection Day has been celebrated since 2006 based on a decision by the Council of Ministers, and it started to be celebrated across the world. It has an informative and educational character so that the public can be aware of protection of data, especially in virtual environments. As the Commissioner's Office, together with its friends from the organizations of civil society, has celebrated this day in 2011, 10 years ago. Compared to the other years, this year we are celebrating in different environments, which is influenced by the actual pandemic. As the pandemic is a big challenge in regards to data protection, personal data protection, it's very hard to organize gatherings also. That's why the guests will be speaking to us through a video link, and the participants is limited at this event, but all interested stakeholders can watch this event on YouTube, and you can be seen also in other media. The Commissioner will take over the floor. Mr. Marinović, please take the floor. Thank you, Zlatko. In my behalf, I would like to thank everybody who are attending this event, who have contributed to respect the tradition that we gather each year, 28th of January, to celebrate the Data Protection Day, and it will be continued in the future. Even the situation, the pandemic with COVID-19 has forced us to not celebrate this event. I know that it will be done through online means, but this is the new normalcy, as I would say, but I hope that we will be going back to the normal state of things. As Zlatko has said, this year's jubilee, 40 years from the first convention on protection of data, 10 years since the Commissioner has been celebrating this day, and 2 dates that are not a jubilee, years that are not a jubilee, and we should mention them. So practically we're talking about protection of personal data, and this publication is dedicated to it in 2021. 2020 was characteristic for many things. It was the first calendar year where we implemented the law on protection of personal data. It started to be implemented since 2019. It's the first calendar year, the whole entire year, that we've been implementing under the authorities of the Commissioner's mandates. 2019, I actually was given the mandates, and it's my first entire year. Since the adoption of the first international act, besides all of the other years that we have been celebrating this day, in the last 19 years, the 2020 has been specific in regards to the protection of all human rights and also those rights that are protected by the Commissioner that he is authorized for. In regards to the field of personal data protection, this is the first time that I'm not talking just about the Commissioner and his office, but all the authorities and in the world and in Europe that are dealing with personal data protection and access to information of public importance have found themselves in a situation that is not prescribed by any international act that has been or any national law. We are in an extraordinary situation in which we have to, in the lack of norms and a lack of laws that regulate such situation, try to balance all our activities. The Commissioner and his office in 2020 did quite well. They faced the challenges well, and that we succeeded in all the measures that possible to protect all both of these rights that we have been given to protect. So personal protection, personal data protection has been a vulnerable field, and we had to protect it, especially for individuals that are patients due to COVID-19, so that the information and data does not become public, so that this issue becomes transparent. So we're talking about victims of violence or some other kinds of activities like secondary victimization. This is parallel. This is secondary attack on their data when they become healthy and when they start living a normal life again. It'll be remembered that they had COVID-19, which is nothing to be ashamed of, contrary to that. But this will be public. It'll be circulated in the public, and you know how citizens react when somebody becomes well again. Neighbors will look at them in a different manner, colleagues as well. So I'm very happy that we were able to protect this information. I hope that this will not happen, that in the future we will not have such kind of attacks on our health, that we will not be in these kinds of challenges to our lives. And if something like this happens, we know how to respond, we know how to behave and how to protect data. We want to talk about us. I'm talking about state authorities and the media and also the citizens and their data, which has to be protected. And also we're talking about the commissioner too. The year has been the way it has been. Let's say we had a publication. The publication was atypical because it did not talk about the decisions and opinions and positions of the commissioner, but dealt with regulations in this field, because the practice of the commissioner was just getting mature. It was starting to deal with this issue with the adoption of the new law. Now we have a practice which is a little unusual. I hope they will not have it in any year in the future, at least in one part. But this is why this publication is interesting. Zlatko will be talking about it. But we should preserve it somewhere in our libraries as, in case there's a need to consult how we did things during the pandemic and the challenges we faced in that period. Well, that's other things that I can say. That I'm very happy that we have gathered. I wouldn't like to talk anymore, and our guests should be. I don't like to keep our guests waiting online. I'd like everybody. A lot of good health to you and your families and members of your collectives. And if your data is violated, the commissioner is there to protect you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marinović. Harmonization of regulations in the field of the personal data protection with the regulations and EU regulations is one of the international obligations of Serbia, which we took over with the ratification of the Association Stabilization Agreement. The EC monitors the adoption of these laws and their implementation in regards to the strengthening of the capacity of the Commissioner, in regards to the strengthening of awareness in the public in regards to this issue. And I would like to ask first, the head of the EU delegation to Serbia and His Excellency Fabrizi to take the floor. Your Excellency, take the floor, please.
Thank you very much. I hope you hear me loud and clear. I look like a pilot in its cockpit with my headphone, but I hope that my voice arrive quite clear. And first of all, happy Data Protection Day to all of you. This is 28th of January is an important day, important cooperation. For me, it's the fourth Data Protection Day in a row. Why so important? The commissioner already said it. Is become part of our daily life. Every moment, during our day, we leave an enormous amount of digital footprint, online, offline, and these data are being collected, processed, and certainly we need, as individual, we need to be sure that those data are duly protected. In the EU, we see the data protection very close to a fundamental right, the right of privacy, in which the European Union has taken a global leadership. In 2018, the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, basically set a global standard for the whole world, but certainly set the balance of what in the EU we think is the protection. The data does not belong to private companies. The data does not belong to government. Data belong to the individual. So that's why our regulation puts center and front the protection of the data. As I said, after the adoption of the GDPR in 2018, we saw that a number of countries and jurisdictions around the world adopted their legislation based on the GDPR, from Chile to South Korea, Brazil, Japan, Kenya, India, California, Indonesia, just to name the few of them. And this reinforces also the role of the EU as a norm setter around the world. The Commission and the EU is more general are monitoring the implementation of the GDPR in the next couple of years. We are going within the European Union in the right direction. Of course, still work need to be done. But the COVID-19, as also the Commissioner said, put again front and center the importance of protection of the privacy. In the EU, in a member state, a number of emergency measures to protect public health has been taken. The GDPR again mark its own force, reinforcing the idea that the restriction on data protection, they have to respect the fundamental rights. They should be necessary, they should be proportionate, they should be dealt in the public interest, such in the case of health. Certainly the data also concern not only the individual, but also has an important role in the economy. In the new digital world, the data became the oil of the economy, and certainly they are also mainly used in the business community, but also in that sense they need to be protected. In the EU, we have established a digital single market. We want the data to be, especially the big data, to be well managed, well protected, and certainly to be sure that they are being used, ensuring the level playing field. If I look at some data published recently, only the protection of cloud security tools, the companies is expected to be spending around the world more than 12 billion euros in 2023 compared to the 5.6 billion spent in 2018. So the need to protect the cloud is something in the interest of the citizen, is interest of the business. Certainly is another area where we are in the EU looking very, very close. I move quickly to Serbia, which is the focus of your conversation today. Serbia adopted the new law on protection of personal data based on the GDPR. This is a very important step forward for Serbia, protecting their own data, and also in a stepping stone for the accession to the European Union. The last year, I welcomed the appointment of the new commissioner. I can express my appreciation for the good work that the Commission has been doing in its first years of the mandate, and certainly and strong support on our side and encouragement to continue to do more in his job. Maybe a few comments on the area on data protection that was contained in the Commission report published last October. There's a number of elements there. Maybe I will focus only on three. The first one is an encouragement to reinforce the Office of the Commission for Data Protection with additional resources and posts. Second is an encouragement to all the Serbian institutions. I understand the number of the institutions which are involved who are affected by the GDPR around 12,000, and there is a need for each and every of them to appoint a data protection officer. From the data in the European Commission report, only more 2,323 as the data protection officer has been appointed, so there's a work to be there, so to increase the number of those who process and control the data. And the third point is also the need not only to implement the ongoing legislation, but also to adopt a complementary regulation concerning some specific important elements like video surveillance and biometrics, which are not yet in place. This is an area where I know that the Commission is working hard. Certainly is an area where we are also following very closely in Brussels. So let me conclude that the expertise of the Commission and his team are essential to implement and monitor and report on the legislation. The Commission also was in the Parliament at the end of last year to present its report. It's important that his voice is heard, and most importantly, that his recommendations are implemented. So I think this is an encouragement on my side, and I'm sure that we will continue the cooperation with the Commission, with his office, and all the interested party in this important endeavor. And again, happy Protection Data Day to all of you. Thank you very much. Floor back to you.
Thank you, Excellency. I'd like to reflect on something that Mr. Fabrizi said, is that data, personal data, does not belong to a company or a state, but to people, individuals. As it's said in the preamble of the GDPR, automatic processing of personal data should be in the service of humankind, to serve the well-being of natural persons. So the states and the companies and profit companies, not the owners of that data, but the personal individuals. So this is a basic human right to protect this data. It is my I'm very happy that Jan Braathu, the head of the Osce mission to Serbia, I would like to welcome him. I'd like to... The Osce mission has been working with, and they've been dealing with analysis on sector security in regards to protection of personal data, which is a challenge in the implementation of this law. Also, we got some results from a survey due to the Osce mission as part of the project activities, where it was recognized that citizens still not well acquainted with the protection of personal data. They do not believe in the successful implementation of this law, and they do not believe that they can achieve the rights in regards to the processing of their personal data. This should be a support for this gathering for raising awareness in the public of protection of personal data. I would like to ask His Excellency Jan Braathu to take the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Dear Commissioner Marinović, dear Ambassador Fabrizi, dear Mr. Flessenkemper, dear Mr. De La Rosa, and dear Mr. Petrovic, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure for me to address you today as the head of the OSCE mission to Serbia on such a topic of key importance in today's society. It is encouraging to see that the pandemic has not prevented the organizers and participants from marking Data Protection Day. Indeed, I congratulate the Commissioner and his team for their thorough work in developing and promoting the right to personal data protection. The OSCE's comprehensive concept of security postulates that the respect for human rights is a precondition for human security. This also includes the right to protection of private data, which is a fundamental human right in our modern societies. The OSCE mission to Serbia works in partnership with Serbian institutions and civil society in order to promote this further. In fact, Serbia has made significant progress by adopting in November 2018 a new law on personal data protection, which entered into force in August 2019. Still, this is but a first step in the protection of citizens' rights. As a minimum, all those dealing with private data must comply with the law, but they should also be encouraged to go beyond and take affirmative action to better protect the privacy of all citizens, as indeed prescribed by the law. The 2018 law introduced a legal regime that requires further harmonization of many other laws and legal acts, regulating private data protection in various areas, as indeed highlighted in the latest Commissioner's report. The report calls for a more systematic approach by all relevant subjects to be formulated in a comprehensive strategy for private data protection and an action plan for its implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, technological developments have made vast amounts of personal data available online, posing an enormous challenge to the protection of that right. Such data has become one of the key resources of modern businesses, and we voluntarily, increasingly, give such data away, sometimes without even realizing what we are doing. The digital services offered on a daily basis to billions of citizens by the so-called Big Five tech giants, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and Google, are supposedly free. However, we all pay for these services by surrendering our personal information through contracts that allow our private information to be used for further business purposes. In addition, the introduction of face recognition software and video surveillance also carries a serious risk for citizens' privacy. Although it is clear that such systems could contribute, and often do contribute, to the detection of crimes, they must contain guarantees that the protection of citizens' rights will be a primary concern of the data handlers. Consequently, the impact of these systems must be thoroughly assessed, held up against existing legislation, and taking into account current and potential risks. All restrictions to fundamental human rights, including the right to personal data protection, must be in accordance with the principles of necessity and proportionality. Above all, we do need transparency, and we do need a broad multi-stakeholder dialogue on the risks that surveillance and the use of digital technology pose to the privacy of the citizens. All voices should be allowed to publicly express their arguments in such a discussion. As artificial intelligence becomes a reality in our everyday life, and complex algorithms allow machines to collect and analyze huge data sets, monitoring human behavior and making predictions accordingly, we must remain vigilant to challenges related to privacy and data protection. The goal is to protect the human rights of human beings that are being described by the data. In this spirit, we should find ways to ensure that machines and those controlling them work without harming people, work with respect for human rights of the people who can be identified by the information that these companies possess. The ultimate goal of any action or initiative in this regard should be for the citizens to regain control over the use of their private data. The success of the entire process requires additional efforts in building and maintaining trust between public sector and the citizens. Indeed, it entails regulation. The OSCE mission to Serbia stands ready to assist all relevant stakeholders in this process and to facilitate a constructive and effective dialogue in this domain. In so doing, we will continue to work with the Commissioner and his team, as well as with other relevant stakeholders, to ensure that data protection standards are fit for purpose, both to protect the rights of individuals, but also to allow businesses and public authorities to offer effective services and protect public safety and security. With this in mind, allow me to highlight a couple of products of the cooperation between my mission and the Commissioner's office. In December 2020, we publicly presented an analysis of security sector-related legislation from the perspective of personal data protection. And in February 2021, we will present the findings of a public perception survey on the attitude of citizens of Serbia towards their right to privacy and personal data protection. Indeed, the generous contribution of Sweden, which holds the 2021 OSCE chairpersonship in office, will allow the mission to implement a number of activities in the next 2 years, including capacity development of representatives of security sector institutions and journalists for personal data protection. Because of the topicality of the issue, the mission will also support a public awareness campaign on personal data protection. Thank you all for your attention. Let's continue to work together to protect the data and respect the human rights of the citizens. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. At the beginning, I pointed out that today we gathered to celebrate a jubilee, the signing of the opening of the convention, which was adopted 40 years ago in 1981. In 1981, at the beginning of the 80s, first international treaty was adopted dealing with the protection of personal data. In the meanwhile, new challenges arose, especially with the internet. The internet developed a lot, tremendously. We have challenges like processing of sets of data, AI, profiling, automated processing of data. And these are challenges that led to the modernization of the Convention of protection of individuals with regard to automatic processing of personal data. So this convention was modernized, and Serbia was one of the first that signed the annex or the protocol to it. And now we are going to talk about it in the publication. It is my
Tobias Flessenkemper.
I'm very happy that Mr. Tobias Flessenkemper, the head of the Council of Europe office in Belgrade, is here with us. Mr. Flessenkemper, I would like you to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, dear Mr. Marinović, Excellencies, dear Sam Fabrizi, dear Jan Braathu, welcome to Belgrade, dear Mr. De Rosa, dear Mr. Petrović, dear human rights defenders, and of course esteemed representatives of the media of this event. Thank you very much for the kind invitation to address you today on behalf of the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Ms. Marija Pejčinović-Burić. The International Data Protection Day, as was just said, is special this year. We are marking the 40th anniversary of the Convention 108, which was opened for signature on 28 January 1981. The Council of Europe mottos this year, to mark this special year, is safeguarding the right to data protection in the digital environment. Our aim is to build upon the groundbreaking treaty that the Council of Europe member states signed 40 years ago. The Council of Europe Convention for the Protection of Individuals with regard to automatic processing of personal data, commonly known as Convention 108, is the only legally binding multilateral instrument on the protection of privacy and personal data open for accession to any country in the world. It currently already has 55 state parties on 4 continents. Another 20 countries participate, and it provides a pillar for the EU's work in this field, including the 2018 General Data Protection Regulation that was already mentioned. The Convention 108 entered into force in Serbia on 1st of January 2006. Serbia also ratified Convention 108 Plus, as was just said, the protocol modernizing the convention to meet the challenges of today. Dear colleagues, for 40 years, the Council of Europe Convention has influenced numerous international, regional, and national privacy and data protection laws, facilitating data flows across national frontiers and supporting respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, including human integrity and dignity. More than ever, our democratic societies, given the exponential digitalization as well as the intensification and globalization of data processing and data flows, need to secure the protection of individuals regarding the processing of personal data. For this, we need international cooperation between data protection authorities, even or more in particular in these times of emergency. Let me thank the Commissioner and his dedicated team for their commitment to international cooperation in the framework of the Council of Europe and elsewhere. The Council of Europe is convinced that the modernized convention should become the international and widely shared standard of reference with a global remit on privacy and data protection in the digital age. Such a common standard will help facilitating transport flows of personal data while guaranteeing an appropriate level of protection and supporting better regulatory cooperation at the international level. We recall the importance of the amending protocol to secure a shared legal space fit for the digital age to preserve the relevance of this landmark instrument for the decades to come. We thus look forward to Serbia inviting other state parties, including several member states of the European Union, to actually follow Serbia's lead and to also ratify the protocol to Convention 108 so that the modernized convention can enter into force as soon as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, since 1981, we have seen rapid technological development and innovation. Yet during the last years, the most popular new data inventions, the smartphone and social media, did not seem to help much. Their malign side effects, such as the creation of powerful monopolies and the pollution of the public space with information disorder, became apparent. The emergence of artificial intelligence exposed our democracies to the influence of authoritarian regimes and their potentially malign technology exports. A recent study commissioned by the Council of Europe analyzed potential negative impact on human beings and society. Among them, discrimination, the advent of a surveillance society, the weakening of human agency, information distortion, electoral interference, digital exclusion, and a potentially harmful attention economy. And these are just some of the concrete concerns that are being expressed by citizens. In this context, the Consultative Committee of the Council of Europe will issue today a set of guidelines calling for the strict regulation of facial recognition technologies in order to address the risks they pose to human rights, especially the rights to privacy and to the protection of personal data. But there's also reason for technological optimism. The adoption of digital technologies during the pandemic raised hopes for a new era of social, economic, and environmental progress. And the way how we meet today is actually testimony of this. Effective use of patient data shall help us to confront the next public health challenge. So there are realistic possibilities of a new era of innovation in data that could lift living standards and help supporting the aims of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially if governments create a resilient regulatory framework that helps new technologies to support the realization of fundamental rights and freedoms of the many and not only of the few. And this is the main aim of the discussion on the future legal framework of for artificial intelligence discussed by the Council of Europe Ad Hoc Committee on AI. And to raise awareness about these formidable challenges, the Council of Europe has created the Stefano Rodota Award. This award recognizes the innovative and original academic research projects in the field of data protection. The prize is awarded in honor and memory of Stefano Rodota, an eminent Italian lawyer and politician who has devoted much of his life to the promotion of data protection. In a few hours at 2 o'clock Central European time, Stefano Rodota Award 2021 will be announced, focusing the attention on the newest challenges and research on personal data protection that will also shape the work of the Commissioner's office here in Belgrade. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for the kind invitation to join you today, and to our audience on and offline for our cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Flessenkemper. We were able to continue the dialogue, even though we had some smaller technical problems. Personal data protection is nothing new. It was recognized 40 years ago in the Republic of Serbia. The right to personal data protection has been guaranteed for more than 30 years. In the Republic of Serbia, the law on personal data protection has been implemented for many decades. The first one in 1998 and the next 2008, and the last time 2018. Effective protection of this rights has been established in the last 10 years since the Commission has been dealing with the protection of personal data protection. But besides that, for most of the entities, controllers and processors and citizens, the field of personal data protection is still something that they're not quite acquainted with. It's abstract, in the fog, so it's unclear. At the beginning of the application of this new law, we've had a need to raise awareness of data processors, data handlers, and others. The Commissioner and the USAID work together on training self-governments in order to apply this law properly. Now, the Mission Director of USAID Serbia, Mike Della Rosa, will take the floor.
Commissioner Marinović, Ambassador Fabrizi, Ambassador Braathu, Mr. Flessenkemper, colleagues and friends, thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to attend this event, both in person and online. Look, this past year, unlike any other in history, focused our attention on the critical importance of technology for sharing information, conducting business, and delivering essential services. Meanwhile, many of the more traditional means of communication have largely been retired by the pandemic. The current environment in which we work and in which we live forces greater reliance on technology and elevates the importance of data protection as governments look to balance the continuity of operations with the need to ensure privacy and the protection of personal data. Most governments implemented restrictive but often necessary measures to limit gatherings and movements to help contain the spread of the virus. Contact tracing and self-reporting, some of which utilize recording and transmission of personal health information, have further highlighted the need to balance the public good with the privacy of individuals. However necessary these new practices might be in the short term, they can also have serious longer-term ramifications for citizens' rights if left unchecked. So we all need to be more vigilant, and we need to be careful, which underscores the importance of today's conference and discussions. Personal data protection and free access to information of public importance are inextricably connected and are essential tenets of transparency and public accountability. USAID, through its Government Accountability Initiative, supports the Commissioner's efforts to raise awareness of the laws in data protection and the free access to data. This includes the obligations of institutions the government and publicly owned bodies, as well as the rights of the public. To reinforce the implementation of the law on personal data protection, USAID has supported the Commissioner on a series of trainings for personnel across 18 local governments. These trainings included 320 representatives from the educational and healthcare institutions, social care centers, and notaries and bailiffs to build the capacities of data processors and controllers. We are expanding these trainings this year to include all public companies. As important as the obligations of government institutions are to responsibly implement the law on personal data protection, the public also needs to understand their rights. Citizens understand what types of personnel are collected. They need to understand how it's collected, why it's needed, and what their rights are. Citizens should be aware of the risk associated with the inappropriate handling of unfair processing of their personal data. So we're supporting an ongoing series of public talks with the Commissioner to engage and inform the public, including civil society organizations and the media, on personal data protection and their rights to the access to information of public importance. USAID has also supported specific innovations for more efficient delivery of public services to citizens and local governments that require particularly close attention to data protection to ensure citizens' privacy is protected while optimizing their interaction with governments and publicly owned companies. We also developed several single administrative points that ensure citizens' personal data is fully protected when exchanged with the municipal and tax authorities, as well as communal companies. Responsible exercise of data protection is good governance initiative that has a nexus with the law on free access to information. When exercised responsibly, citizens' rights to access information of public importance should not be impeded with due justification by institutions who might sometimes claim they're there to protect the government data, nor publicly owned companies' unjustified assertions of business secrets. We've supported the Commissioner in bringing this to the attention of all stakeholders with the publication of an integrated booklet that describes the relationship between public access to documents and privacy and data protection to help ensure that the laws are seen as complementary and not contradictory. Getting this balance right takes a lot of hard work. As such, USAID will continue to support the Commission to advance its key mandates regarding access to information of public importance and personal data. Thank you all again for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. De La Rosa, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Marinović. This was not in the agenda, but something happened since yesterday, so that's why I'm using the opportunity to speak to you, because I will not be able to do that after the gathering. Now I have to leave the gathering because in the National Assembly there's a session, a very important board committee dealing with the strengthening of personnel in the Commissioner's office. It starts at 12 o'clock. So I excuse myself that I will not be here from this moment on. I hope this will not be felt, because Zlatko will be presenting the publication in a phenomenal manner. So I would like to thank you once more for attending, and I'd like to wish you a happy Data Protection Day. I hope we'll be doing our best to protect our and your data when it's necessary, and the data of all citizens of the Republic of Serbia also. And in a maximum measure, protect one of the fundamental rights of which is guaranteed by the Constitution of the Republic of Serbia. Thank you once more. The guests will receive a publication, a copy of it, and you'll see how beneficial it can be for you. I hope we'll see each other in a better, more healthy environment, but in a good, with goodwill, just like now. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marinović. According to the agenda, I should be talking about the new publication, Position Opinions of the Commissioner, which we have prepared for 2020, but I think we should maybe close to talk about how we drafted this. About a year ago, when we were celebrating this same day, the Commissioner had a task to prepare such a publication. However, in this period, there were many changes in the field of personal data protection. The law on personal data protection was adopted in November 2018, and an application started in end of August 2019. In this period, the Commissioner carried out all the organizational technical measures in order to prepare for the application of this law, but the period of only 5 months was inefficient for forming any significant case law in regards to the application of this new law on personal data protection, which has not a lot similar with the old one. That's why this publication that we have issued for the Data Protection Day for 2020 contained only relevant regulations. And that is a European GDPR, and it's an official translation because it's official translation of the law on personal data protection and all the regulations and bylaws that were adopted according to this law. After a year and a half of the application of this law, the Commissioner's Office has, in a very hard situation, formed a case law of inspection surveillance upon complaints of citizens giving opinions and transferring opinions to other countries and international organizations. The application of this law was very hard at the beginning because of normative resolutions of this law, because of the low awareness of the controllers and processes of this the data. The state authorities work to preventively checking lists, education through giving opinions, corrective measures. One of the most significant successes that the Commissioner achieved during 2020 was the appointment of representatives of many international companies, internet giants in the Republic of Serbia in regards to personal data protection in Serbia. The Commissioner addressed them and they appointed their representatives, so our citizens today in a very easy way in their own mother tongue address these giants, these companies, and talk about the processing of their data. So Google, Viber, Yahoo, Booking.com, Netflix, Yandex, Alibaba, Snapchat, TopTown, AIQ, appoint their representatives. What has not been achieved is that there's a task, which is Article 100 in the law of personal data protection, that all provisions of the other regulations in regard to the personal data protection should be harmonized with the law on personal data protection until the 2020. This task was not achieved, and that is what will represent a problem in the future. In principle, the system of protection of data, personal data cannot be changed only with amendments and the adoption of a new law on personal data protection. All the regulations in different areas, police, health, defense, army, tax, business operations, insurance, all aspects of our lives have to be re-examined, and their provisions have to be harmonized with the law on personal data protection. This is a strategic aim, and a lot of time is needed for it. Also, during the actual pandemic, there were some cases of compromising data of citizens and services, compromising of the information system COVID-19. Currently, the most important information system in Serbia, where all data of our citizens who have been infected with COVID is entered, and there's statistics and provides the statistics how many people died, how many people are on ventilators, and so forth. In this very hard situation with the banning of movement, the Commissioner was able to prevent this kind of breach of security system, and the controller of the data established one who established the system did not take into account the new law, how there was no contract between processors and controls, and there's no assessment on of data, which is one of the formal requirements. There were no technical measures of protection because of that. The consequence is that any user of the internet in the world, and also Serbia, could get a password and username to access the information system system to COVID-19. Anybody could do that through his computer, through his cell phone, and enter the information system. And not only see the information, but also to enter new information or amend or modify the old data. This kind of compromising situation was prevented by the commissioner in very hard situation and circumstances during the police curfew, which was lasting for 4 days. Now, when I explained all of the circumstances in regards to publishing of this publication, I'll talk about the publication of the publication that we present today, which will be on the website of the commissioner in electronic form in regards to, and it deals with the new law on personal data protection. This says in entirety, it deals with appeals, opinions, acts that were adopted during supervision. They can be used as guidelines in the context of controls and process of data, and they can overcome dilemmas. For example, like in the old law on personal data protection, these provisions, do they deal with the protection of data of people who have deceased? This dilemma can be dealt with in this publication, how to remove this dilemma. It deals with the general and individual regimes of processing data by state authorities that are responsible for that. The appeal procedure, irregular. These appeals are sent to the commissioner. You have a practice in regards to the principle of the legality, fairness, and transparency, and the accuracy and integrity or the confidentiality of data. The conditions to allow data to be processed, also legitimate interest is also very important and also interesting. One of the new novelties in the new law on personal data protection talks about these are issues that deal with personal data. What can be considered personal data? For example, data about a car, is that personal data? For example, data about IT address, is that personal data? Also deals with how the conduct of controllers and processors, that's general obligations in regards to organizational, technical, and personal measures of protection of personal protection measures. Measures of processing, assessments of the influence of personal data protection. These are all new institutes in this new law. Also records, transparency of processing of joint process controllers. Also rights of persons subject to processing of their data. The new law has adopted new rights based on GDPR, so now our citizens have the right to transfer of right to data protection, on the right to be forgotten, right to complain, the processing of data and other rights. This is personal data processing of personal data of children and the treatment of this data deals with children and the youth accepting these rules and agreements when they're on the internet. Also, we have video surveillance, which is not regulated well in the laws of the Republic of Serbia. To find 5 examples, we can find 5 examples in this field. Also, video surveillance is one of the serious issues that we're dealing with. The commissioner deals with this issue, but other laws that should regulate this field have not been aligned. So there are some novelties. Also, the last year in regards to transfer of personal data to other countries and international organizations, we deal with that in the publication. Also, the area of labor relations is also always current when we're talking about personal data protection. We have 4 interesting examples from the case law in the publication. The law on personal data protection talks about processing of labor data, labor-related data, prescribes that laws that regulate this field. If they regulate data protection, they have to prescribe different measures that deal with the protection of the dignity of employees. Today, all these laws that are dealing with this area, labor, employment, and security, and health work, do not prescribe, but they should. And this is something that we have to deal with in the future. Also, processing of special data is a delicate area, and also processing of religion, sexual orientation, trade union affiliation, ethnic affiliation, and so forth. Very delicate issues. There are some illustrative examples that shows that we have to deal with the protection of data in this manner. We also have a bylaw that has been adopted with processing of data, states that there has to be assessment of such processing of personal data, and our opinion has to be given by Commissioner. I'm happy that we are all together to celebrate the 40 years from the adoption of the Convention for Protection of Individuals. New publication contains a text of the modernized version of the Convention for the Protection of Individuals with regard to automatic processing of personal data, which our country was one of the first to sign. This convention represented the basis for our gathering because we are celebrating its jubilee. We have a lot of work in the future and raising awareness, sense of data protection as a means for achieving broader law, and that's right, and that's the right to privacy. The Commissioner's office is a national authority that deals with this issue, and I would like to repeat a quote from the preamble of the GDPR, which you will not find in our law on personal data protection, which should be the guide to all of us. The preamble states, I repeat, processing of personal data should be imagined such that it should be in the service of humankind, and it should be for the well-being of natural persons. At the center of protection of data is not the state or the money or the government, but every one of us individually should protect it. It's our own privacy. It's a fundamental right, human right, that we should all fight for it ourselves, because it's something that is really to us. I would like to wish you a happy Data Protection Day. I'd like to thank all of the participants, and I'd like you to have a pleasant day.